Commander Jake Morrison stood at the window of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the stars. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, and he was drinking his coffee when the alarm started screaming. The coffee cup fell from his hands and shattered on the metal floor as red lights flashed everywhere. "Commander, we have multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace," shouted Lieutenant Kevin Walsh from his station. His voice was shaking, and Jake could see why. The main screen showed space, filled with massive ships that looked like nothing humans had ever built. They were dark and twisted with surfaces that seemed to pulse with purple light. Jake grabbed the communication device and spoke into it. "This is Commander Morrison to all stations. Battle stations now. This is not a drill." His voice stayed calm, even though his heart was beating fast. He had trained for this day, but never really believed it would come. The alien ships were huge. Each one was bigger than anything humans had built, and there were hundreds of them. They formed a perfect line across space, blocking out the stars behind them. Jake counted them quickly and stopped when he reached 50. There were too many to count. Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on the communication screen from Earth Command. Her face was serious, but she looked ready for whatever was coming. "Jake, are you seeing this?" she asked. Behind her, Jake could see people running around and screens showing the alien fleet. "Yes, ma'am. One count at least 200 ships, maybe. More. They appeared out of nowhere about 10 minutes ago," Jake replied. He looked at the screen again and saw more ships still appearing from hyperspace. "Make that 300 ships." The alien fleet moved slowly toward Earth, like a dark cloud covering the sun. They were in no hurry, and Jake realized they knew humans could not stop them. The thought made him angry, but he kept his feelings hidden. Then, the communication system crackled with static, and a voice spoke in perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical, like a computer trying to sound alive. "Attention, primitive species of the third planet. This is the Vorthan Imperial Fleet. You will respond immediately." Jake looked at Admiral Carter on the screen. She nodded, and he opened the communication channel. "This is Earth Defense Command. We hear you." "Good," the voice replied. "We are transmitting coordinates for your leaders to receive our ambassador. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your world." The communication went dead, and Jake felt cold sweat on his forehead. He had known this day might come ever since Earth started listening to space with radio telescopes. The scientists had always said there might be other life out there, but nobody had prepared for this. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the United Nations building in New York. He had never been inside before, and was surprised by how big it was. Representatives from every country on Earth sat in their seats looking worried and scared. President Amy Rodriguez sat in the front row looking calm, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. The center of the room began to glow with blue light, and slowly a figure appeared. It was tall and thin with 6 arms and legs that bent in ways that made Jake feel sick. Its head was large with compound eyes, like an insect, and its mouth had sharp teeth that clicked when it moved. The creature wore no clothes, but its skin looked like metal armor. "I am Zixthara, ambassador of the Vorthan Empire," the creature said. Its voice came from a device around its neck that translated its words into English. "Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." President Rodriguez stood up slowly. "What does that mean exactly?" Zixthara's compound eyes moved to look at her, and Jake heard several people gasp. "It means your species will serve the Empire, as all species serve the Empire. You have 3 standard galactic cycles to prepare your tribute." "What tribute?" Rodriguez asked. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see her hands were shaking slightly. 50% of all resources on your world," Zixthara replied. 20% of your population for labor duties in the Empire. Complete surrender of all military assets. These are standard requirements for all newly integrated worlds. The room erupted in angry voices as representatives shouted in different languages. Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized what the alien was describing. They wanted to take half of everything humans owned and 1 in 5 people as slaves. "You cannot be serious," Rodriguez said when the room became quiet again. "We will never agree to those terms." Zixthara made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your agreement is not required. However, surrender makes the process easier for your species. We have integrated over 3,000 worlds into the Empire. None have successfully resisted." Jake watched as the alien waved one of its arms, and the air filled with images. They showed different worlds with different species, all working in mines and factories. The creatures in the images looked tired and hopeless, like they had given up all hope. "Your technology is primitive," Zixthara continued. "Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your fastest vessels move slower than our cargo haulers. Resistance will only result in unnecessary death and destruction." President Rodriguez looked around the room at all the other leaders. Jake could see them nodding slowly as they realized how hopeless their situation was. The alien ships outside were proof that humanity was completely outmatched. But then Rodriguez stood up straighter and looked directly at the alien ambassador. Her voice was clear and strong when she spoke. "No." The single word echoed in the quiet room. "Zixthara's compound." Eyes focused on her, and his mandibles clicked rapidly. "Perhaps you did not understand. Compliance is not optional." "I understood perfectly," Rodriguez replied. "And my answer is still no. Humanity will never surrender to slavery." Jake felt proud of his president, but also terrified. He knew what this meant. The alien had said resistance was futile, and Jake believed him. The ships outside were proof that humans were facing something far beyond their ability to fight. Zixthara was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke again, and his voice seemed amused. "Very well. You have 3 cycles to reconsider. Our fleet will remain in your system until you see reason. When you are ready to submit, we will accept your surrender." The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving the room in silence. Jake looked around at the faces of world leaders and saw fear in every one. They had just declared war on an empire that controlled 3,000 worlds. Outside the building, Jake could see people looking. Up at the sky where the alien ships waited like dark clouds before a storm. Dr. Alex Chun walked through the underground hallway, knowing that everything was about to change. The hallway was 3 miles below the Nevada desert and officially did not exist. He had been waiting for this day for 20 years, and now it was finally here. His security badge opened door after door as he moved deeper into the facility. The Prometheus project had been humanity's greatest secret since 1952. While the world above worried about the alien fleet in space, Alex and his team had been preparing for exactly this moment. Hidden facilities on every continent hummed with activity as scientists and soldiers made final preparations for war. Alex entered the main control room, where hundreds of people worked at computer stations. Giant screens showed images of the alien. Ships waiting in space above Earth. Other screens showed things the aliens could not see. Secret bases on the moon were powering up weapons that had been hidden for decades. Space stations disguised as satellites were preparing to reveal their true purpose. "Status report," Alex said to Dr. Janet Moore, who ran the daily operations. She looked up from her computer screen with tired eyes. She had been working without sleep for 3 days straight. "All Prometheus sites are online and ready," Janet replied. "The lunar bases report full weapon systems operational. The orbital platforms are charged and waiting for orders. Project Lazarus shows green across all networks." Alex nodded and felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Everything they had built over the decades was working perfectly. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive planet, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. Across the facility, Captain Ryan Brooks led his soldiers through their final training exercises. The men and women of the 1st Terran Marine Division looked like giants in their powered armor suits. Each suit was 8 feet tall and covered in weapon systems that could destroy a tank. The soldiers moved with surprising grace, despite wearing armor that weighed over a ton. "Listen up, Marines," Ryan shouted to his troops. "Today, we show these aliens what happens when they threaten Earth. You have trained for this your entire careers. Every exercise, every simulation has prepared you for the next few hours." The Marines cheered, and Ryan felt proud of them. They were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced, and they were ready to prove it. Each suit of armor contained technology that was decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. Plasma cannons could melt through steel, and personal shield generators could stop artillery rounds. Private Danny Martinez checked his weapon systems one final time. The plasma rifle felt comfortable in his hands after years of training with it. He had joined the Marines right out of high school, thinking he would never see real combat. Now he was about to fight aliens from another world, and he was ready. In another part of the facility, Dr. Sarah Kim worked frantically to complete the final connections for Project Lazarus. The quantum entanglement network would allow instant communication between all human forces no matter where they were in the galaxy. More importantly, it would allow coordination of attacks across multiple star systems at the same time. "Sarah, we need that network online in 2 hours," Alex said as he entered her laboratory. The room was filled with strange machines that hummed with energy. Cables ran everywhere, connecting devices that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. "It will be ready," Sarah replied without looking up from her work. "The quantum gates are stable, and the entanglement field covers the entire solar system. We can extend it to the outer colonies if needed." Alex smiled, knowing that the aliens had no idea what they were facing. While they thought Earth was isolated and helpless human colonies on dozens of worlds were preparing for coordinated strikes, the Vorthan Empire was about to learn that humanity was not as primitive as they appeared. Above ground, the world seemed normal, except for the alien ships hanging in space like dark clouds. News reports showed people going about their daily lives, trying to pretend everything was normal. What the reports did not show were the military units moving into position around the globe. Colonel Beth Turner sat in a command center that looked like an ordinary office building from the outside. Inside, it was filled with the most advanced military technology on Earth. She watched screens showing the alien probe ships scanning the planet. The probes saw exactly what they were supposed to see. "Are the decoys working?" Beth asked Lieutenant Sam Parker, who monitored the alien scans. Sam had been tracking alien probe activity for the past 2 days and knew their patterns perfectly. "Yes. AAM. They are seeing primitive satellites, chemical rockets, and basic nuclear weapons. The probe scans are not detecting any of our real defenses," Sam replied. "They think we are exactly what we appear to be." Beth smiled, knowing the aliens were falling into the trap perfectly. Every piece of advanced technology on Earth was hidden behind carefully designed camouflage. The International Space Station looked like a simple research platform, but it was actually a weapons platform with enough firepower to destroy a city. Communication satellites were actually defensive systems that could shoot down incoming missiles. Dr. Helen Rodriguez worked in a laboratory beneath the Pentagon, where she had spent 15 years developing humanity's most advanced weapons. Her team had reverse-engineered alien technology from crashes that had been covered up for decades. Area 51 was real, but it was just one of 50 such facilities around the world. "The plasma cannons are ready for deployment," Helen reported to. Alex during a video conference call. "We have enough power to equip every major military unit on Earth. The particle beam weapons will be online within the hour." Alex felt confident as reports came in from around the world. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The aliens thought they were dealing with a world of primitives who could barely reach their own moon. They had no idea that humans had been secretly exploring the galaxy for 30 years. Commander Jake Morrison watched from his space station as alien probe ships moved closer to Earth. The probes were scanning everything they could see, but they were not seeing the real defenses. Hidden weapons platforms looked like space debris until they received the activation signal. Major Kate Phillips stood on a rooftop in Washington, looking up at the alien ships through special glasses that showed her things normal people could not see. Energy fields surrounded the city, connecting buildings that looked ordinary, but were actually parts of a planetary defense grid. The countdown had begun, and soon the aliens would learn that Earth was not helpless. They would discover that humanity had been preparing for this war longer than they had been alive. The Vorthan Empire was about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The Vorthan assault began at exactly 6 in the morning when the sun was rising over Washington. Commander Jake Morrison watched from his space station as the alien battle cruisers moved down through Earth's atmosphere like giant metal birds. Their hulls glowed with energy as they prepared to fire on the cities below. Zixthara himself led the flagship toward the capital city, broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. His voice filled the communication channels as he spoke to what he believed were terrified primitives. "This is your final opportunity to surrender. Submit now, and your deaths will be quick." The alien ships moved into perfect formation above major cities around the world. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and dozens of other cities found themselves in the shadow of Vorthan war machines. The ships were so large, they blocked out the sun, and people on the ground stopped to stare up at them. In fear, in the hidden command center, Colonel Beth Turner watched the alien movements on her screens. Everything was going exactly as they had predicted. The aliens were positioning themselves for maximum psychological impact before beginning their bombardment. They wanted to terrify humanity into surrender. "All units, this is Earth Defense Command." Beth spoke into her communication device. "You are cleared to engage on my signal. Remember, this is what we trained for." Captain Danny Clark sat in the cockpit of what looked like an ordinary passenger airplane waiting at an airport in Nevada. The plane was painted white with blue stripes and had windows along the sides like any commercial aircraft. But Danny knew better. He had been flying this machine for 5 years, and it was the most advanced fighter in human history. "Phoenix Squadron ready for takeoff," Danny reported over his radio. Around him, 11 other pilots made final checks on their aircraft. To anyone watching, they looked like airline pilots preparing for a routine flight. The planes even had fake airline logos painted on their sides. The alien flagship reached the center of Washington and began charging its main weapon. Energy crackled along the ship's hull as it prepared to turn the White House into a crater. Zixthara spoke one final time, offering humanity a chance to surrender before the bombardment began. The response came from Colonel Beth Turner, broadcasting from what the aliens thought was a primitive satellite. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke to the Vorthan fleet. "This is Earth Defense Command to all Vorthan vessels. You have 10 seconds to withdraw from Terran space, or we will open fire." Zixthara's laughter echoed across all communication channels. The idea that these primitives could threaten the mighty Vorthan Empire was so absurd he could not control his amusement. His compound eyes glittered with cruel humor as he prepared to teach these humans their place in the galaxy. 10 seconds. Later, his laughter stopped. The sky above Earth erupted in brilliant white light as hidden weapons platforms revealed themselves. Throughout space, what the Vorthans had dismissed as space debris and broken satellites suddenly bristled with particle beam arrays and quantum torpedo launchers. The pieces of junk floating in Earth's orbit were actually the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. The International Space Station unfolded like a mechanical flower as its disguise fell away. A simple research platform became a massive fortress bristling with railgun batteries that could punch holes through asteroid. Energy shields flickered to life around the station as it prepared for battle. Captain Danny Clark pushed his throttle forward and felt his aircraft accelerate faster than any jet engine could provide. The fake airline plane shed its camouflage. Like a snake shedding skin, wings swept back into attack position, and weapons pods extended from hidden compartments. Within seconds, the passenger plane had become a sleek fighter powered by a miniaturized fusion drive. "Phoenix Squadron airborne and engaging," Danny reported as his fighter climbed toward space. Behind him, 11 other fighters followed, shedding their civilian disguises and revealing their true nature. They moved through the atmosphere faster than sound, chasing the alien cruisers that had invaded Earth's sky. The first Vorthan ship took a direct hit from an orbital particle beam, and its biomechanical hull cracked open like an egg. Purple fluid sprayed into space as the ship's organic systems failed. The massive vessel began falling toward Earth, trailing smoke and sparks. Major Kate Phillips watched from her position in Washington as the alien flagship above the city suddenly found itself under attack from every direction. Energy beams from hidden ground installations struck its shields while fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. The ship's return fire struck the city below, but instead of destroying buildings, the energy was absorbed and redirected by planetary defense systems. "Shield generators are working perfectly," Kate reported into her radio. "The aliens are hitting the city, but their weapons are being absorbed and converted to power our defensive grid." The absorbed energy was immediately channeled back into space as coherent light beams that sliced through Vorthan armor like a hot knife through butter. Every shot the aliens fired at Earth was turned against them and sent back twice as powerful. Zix Thara flagship shuddered under the combined assault from weapons he had not known existed. His bridge filled with smoke as systems failed around him. "How is this possible?" he shouted at his crew. "These primitives should not have this technology." Dr. Sarakim activated the next phase of humanity's defense from her underground laboratory. The quantum virus she had spent years developing was transmitted through the alien communication networks directly into their ship computers. The virus was designed specifically to attack biomechanical systems like those the Vorthans used. The virus spread through the alien fleet faster than they could react. Ship after ship found their organic neural networks shutting down as human-computer code invaded their biological systems. Engines failed navigation, went offline, and weapon systems stopped responding to commands. Captain Ryan Brooks led his Marines into battle as the first alien ship crashed in the desert outside Las Vegas. The Vorthan survivors stumbled from their burning vessel only to face soldiers in powered armor carrying weapons that could melt steel. The aliens had never seen anything like the human Marines. "Surrender and you will be treated according to the laws of war," Ryan announced through his armor speakers. The surviving aliens looked at the 8-foot-tall Marines and quickly dropped their weapons. In space, the battle continued as more Vorthan ships fell to human weapons. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from Earth Command as decades of preparation paid off. The aliens had expected to face primitives armed with chemical rockets and nuclear bombs. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy with technology they did not understand. The first wave of the Vorthan assault was over in less than 30 minutes. Half their fleet was destroyed or disabled, and the survivors were retreating to safe distance from Earth. They had learned that humanity was not as helpless as they appeared. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the main command center, watching the alien fleet retreat to a safe distance from Earth. Half of their ships were destroyed or floating dead in space, and the survivors were trying to understand what had happened. She opened a communication channel that would reach every Vorthan vessel in the solar system. "This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Defense Fleet," she announced. Her voice was calm, but carried the authority of someone who had just proven her people were not helpless primitives. "You came here believing we were weak and defenseless. You thought wrong." Zixthara responded from his damaged flagship. His voice was filled with confusion and anger as he tried to make sense of what he had witnessed. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed you were a primitive species with basic technology. You should not have weapons like this." Lisa smiled as she prepared to reveal the truth that would shock the entire Vorthan Empire. "Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see. Everything you observed about humanity was carefully planned to hide our real capabilities. The truth was stunning in its simplicity and had been hidden from the galaxy for over 60 years. When humans first detected organized radio signals from deep space in the 1960s, they had not been surprised. The radio telescopes that found those signals had been built specifically to listen for alien communications. Dr. Simon Hayes appeared on screens throughout the facility as he began explaining humanity's greatest deception. He was the head of Project Looking Glass, which had been monitoring alien civilizations since 1947. His team had been preparing for first contact long before most people believed aliens existed. "Every space program you observed was designed to make you underestimate us," Simon explained to the alien commanders who were listening. "The rockets you saw were real, but they were not our primary means of reaching space. We have had faster-than-light travel for 30 years. The surviving Vorthan captains listened in growing horror as Simon described how human scientists had reverse-engineered alien technology from ships that had crashed on Earth decades earlier. Area 51 had been real, but it was just one of 50 such facilities hidden around the world where human engineers studied captured alien technology. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster took over the explanation from a facility that officially did not exist. She revealed that humans had been exploring the galaxy in secret since 1995, using ships that could travel between stars in days rather than years. While the Vorthans thought Earth was isolated, humanity had already established colonies on 12 worlds. "We have been watching your empire for decades," Amy continued. "We know about every world you control, every species you have enslaved, and every weakness in your military structure. You are not fighting primitives. You are fighting an enemy that has been studying you for longer than some of your soldiers have been alive." The revelation that hit the aliens hardest came from General Pete Watson, who had been planning this day since he was a young officer. He appeared on the communication screens wearing the uniform of the Terran Liberation Command, and behind him stood officers from a dozen different species. "There is something else you need to know about humanity," Pete said. His voice was hard and filled with old anger that had been burning for centuries. "Earth is not our original homeworld. We came here as refugees fleeing from an empire that destroyed our real home 800 years ago." The silence from the alien fleet was complete as Pete continued his explanation. Humanity had originally lived on a world called Terra Nova in a distant part of the galaxy. It had been a peaceful planet with cities full of art and learning where humans had lived in harmony with their environment for thousands of years. Your empire found Terra Nova and demanded the same tribute you demanded from Earth, Pete explained. Our ancestors refused, just as we refuse today. The difference was that they were not prepared for war. Your ships bombarded our cities from orbit, and your soldiers hunted survivors through the ruins. Only a few thousand humans had survived the destruction of Terra Nova. They had escaped in whatever ships, they could find and fled across the galaxy, looking for a new home. The journey had taken decades, and many had died along the way from starvation, disease, and despair. The survivors who reached Earth swore an oath, Peak continued. They promised that humanity would grow strong and one day return to reclaim what was taken from us. Every generation passed that promise to their children. Every child grew up knowing that someday we would face the Vorthan Empire again. Captain Joe Miller appeared on the screen next to Pete. He commanded the secret fleet that had been built in hidden shipyards throughout the outer solar system. Behind him, through the window of his ship, the aliens could see vessels unlike anything in their databases. "We are not the same species you destroyed 8 centuries ago," Joe explained. "We have grown stronger, smarter, and more determined. We learned from our defeat and spent every day since then preparing for this moment." The human ships visible through Joe's window were sleek and powerful, looking more advanced than anything the Vorthans had ever seen. Their hulls were made from materials that did not exist in Vorthan science, and their weapon systems operated on principles the aliens could not understand. Dr. Helen Rodriguez activated the quantum communication array that connected all human forces throughout the galaxy. Suddenly, the screens showed images from dozens of star systems where human fleets had been waiting and hiding for this exact moment. "Every world your empire controls is now under attack," Helen announced. "We have ships positioned near all of your major colonies and military bases. This is not an invasion. This is liberation." The images showed human vessels emerging from hyperspace around Vorthan worlds. The aliens had never suspected that their enemies had been positioning forces throughout their territory for years. Every strategic location in the Empire was now under threat. Zixthara's voice was weak when he finally responded. His flagship was drifting powerless, and half his fleet was destroyed. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Admiral Carter answered immediately. "We want you to leave this system and never return. Go back to your empire and tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity remembers Terra Nova, and we are coming home." The message was clear and terrifying. The species the Vorthans thought they had completely destroyed had survived and grown into something far more dangerous than they had ever been. The hunters had become the hunted, and 8 centuries of planning were about to bear fruit. The battle for Earth lasted exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes, from the first shot to the last alien ship going silent. When it ended, 70% of the Vorthan fleet was either destroyed or floating dead in space. The survivors huddled together at the edge of the solar system, trying to understand how their mighty empire had been defeated by creatures they thought were primitives. Zixthara sat in his command chair, watching his bridge crew work frantically to keep their damaged ship from breaking apart. Half his officers were dead, and the other half were too shocked to function properly. His compound eyes stared at the communication screen where Admiral Carter waited for his response. "We request terms of surrender," Zixthara said finally. His voice was weak and filled with the pain of defeat. Around him, the remaining Vorthan commanders nodded in agreement. They had never been beaten this badly, and they needed time to regroup and plan their revenge. Captain Joe Miller appeared on the communication screen next to Admiral Carter. His face was hard and showed no mercy for the aliens who had destroyed his ancestors' homeworld. "There will be no terms and no negotiations. You have 2 choices. Flee now or be destroyed." The alien commander tried to argue that surrender was allowed under galactic law, but Joe cut him off with a gesture. "Your empire destroyed Terra Nova without offering surrender. Your ships bombarded our cities and hunted our people through the ruins. Why should we show you mercy you never showed us?" Zixthara realized that these humans were not interested in following the normal rules of war. They wanted revenge for something that had happened before he was born, and they were not going to be satisfied with simple victory. Fear crept into his voice as he asked what humanity intended to do. Dr. Helen Rodriguez activated the final phase of Project Lazarus from her control room deep beneath the Pentagon. Quantum gates opened throughout the galaxy, like doorways between the stars. Through each gate came human warships that had been waiting in secret bases for 8 centuries. The gates opened near every major Vorthan world at exactly the same moment. Planets that had been secure behind layers of defense suddenly found human fleets in their skies. The ships that emerged were larger and more advanced than anything the Empire had in their databases. On the Vorthan, homeworld Emperor Vexstar watched in horror as human vessels appeared above his capital city. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with hulls that seemed to be made of liquid metal and weapons that glowed with inner fire. He had ruled the galaxy for 200 years, but had never seen anything like them. Commander Luke Henderson led the assault on the Imperial Palace, broadcasting a message that would be remembered for generations. This is the Terran Liberation Fleet. Your empire ends today. Surrender now, and your people will be spared. Continue to resist, and you will share the fate you gave to Terra Nova. The Emperor tried to rally his forces, but found that human ships had appeared near every military base in the system. His generals reported that their weapons could not penetrate human shields, and their fastest ships could not escape the quantum fields that surrounded each human vessel. The war that followed was swift and decisive because humanity had been planning every move for 800 years. While the Vorthans had grown soft from easy victories over primitive worlds, the humans had spent centuries preparing for this exact conflict. Every battle was fought according to plans that had been refined through generations. Captain Ryan Brooks led his Marines in the assault on the Vorthan military headquarters on their homeworld. The aliens had never faced soldiers like the humans, who moved through their defenses like ghosts and struck with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. This building is now under human control, Ryan announced as his troops secured the command center. All Vorthan forces are ordered to lay down their weapons and surrender immediately. The Vorthan generals looked at the human soldiers in their powered armor and realized they had no choice. Their empire that had conquered 3,000 worlds was crumbling in a single day. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were rising up with human support to reclaim their freedom. Dr. Sarah Kim coordinated the liberation efforts from her quantum command center. Her screens showed battles on dozens of worlds as human forces struck at the heart of the Vorthan Empire. Every victory was transmitted instantly to other human commanders through the quantum network. Phase 3 is complete, Sarah reported to Admiral Carter. All major Vorthan military installations are under our control. The Emperor has agreed to unconditional surrender and is requesting safe passage for civilian populations. Admiral Carter considered the request carefully. Humanity had waited 8 centuries for this moment, but they were not the same species that had fled Terra Nova in desperation. They had grown wiser and more compassionate during their long exile. Granted, Carter replied. All civilian populations will be protected and relocated to safe worlds. Military personnel will be processed as prisoners of war according to human standards. The transformation of the galaxy began immediately as human administrators took control of former Vorthan worlds. Species that had been enslaved for generations were given their freedom and the resources to rebuild their civilizations. Worlds that had been strip-mined were restored using human technology. General Pete Watson stood in the ruins of the Vorthan Imperial Palace holding a piece of metal from Terra Nova that his family had carried for 800 years. The metal was all that remained of the home humanity had lost, but it had served as a reminder of what they were fighting for. The debt is paid, Pete said quietly as he placed the metal fragment on the Emperor's throne. Around him, human soldiers and liberated aliens worked together to build a new government based on cooperation rather than conquest, not the age of the Vorthen. Empire was over, and in its place rose something the galaxy had never seen before. The Terran. Republic welcomed all species as equals and protected the weak from those who would exploit them. Humanity had learned from their long exile that strength without compassion led only to destruction. Commander Jake Morrison stood on Earth looking up at stars that were no longer filled with enemies. The alien ships were gone, and in their place flew vessels carrying former slaves to new homes where they could live in freedom. The children of Terra Nova had kept their promise, and the galaxy would never be the same dot in the years that followed. Historians would study the day when Earth refused to pay tribute and wonder how such a small world had defeated an empire that spanned the galaxy. The answer was simple but powerful. Humanity had never forgotten where they came from, and they had never stopped believing they would return home someday. The Galactic Empire had demanded tribute from Earth, but instead, Earth had collected a debt that was 8 centuries overdue.